Chris.
Heath.
How's it going?
It's going swell.
I'm glad to hear that.
Even better now that you're here and we're recording episode 7 of Mobius Tubes.
Mobius Tubes, everybody. Your favorite podcast where I don't play games.
But I think you're going to turn that around this week, correct?
You'll see.
Okay. I'm going to start us off with a kind of softball correction right off the bat. And this is actually provided to us by Nathan, who wrote into the podcast last episode.
Oh, he's just doing his extra credit.
He is. We put out a request to listeners all over the globe to kind of write in with this information. We got hung up on the fact about the basketball-looking things hanging from power lines.
Oh, I'm so happy that this is the correction and that it's not like, actually, Hank doesn't know that androids are, Yes, so I was considering cutting that whole part out, the what driving made me feel like segment.
Well, thank goodness you didn't, because it provides us with this entertaining bit right now.
It's entertaining and it's informative. I've wondered this for more than half my life.
So clearly, Nathan put a lot of time and effort into coming up with this information. It looks like he took a screen snipping of a Google search he made.
Oh my God.
And apparently, the marker balls are placed on power lines to make the conductor crossings visible to aircraft.
Oh, I was thinking birds. I should have thought bigger.
Yeah, helicopters and small aircraft often fly low in mountain passes or freeways and usually fly low while approaching an airport. And it's kind of a safety precaution.
Curious. Like, I would see them by like the rec center.
Yeah, they are by the rec center. That's my only memory of them as well.
Well, Nathan has just become the podcast MVP for having the most valuable content on the podcast.
Right.
All right. Why don't you start off with whatever games you played?
Okay. I have a handful. I'll start us off with my Into the Breach update, because at this point in time, I've sunk a little over 10 hours total into the Breach. And I've completed my first run. I think I mentioned how finely tuned the difficulty was during my initial impressions, and I never mentioned that I was playing the game on normal. There's also a hard difficulty setting and an easy setting. But my difficulty impressions were based on the regular, vanilla, normal setting. And I made it to the final mission, was fully prepared to take it on, had my grid power levels maxed out. I'm ready to lose some buildings here. Mm-hmm. And my mechs land on the final mission island. The only objective is survive. Just survive enough turns with my mech still alive. I think the turn limit is like 5. And I also have to make sure the power grid level does not hit 0. Because if that happens, apparently the mechs do not have a way to evacuate the island. And they're kind of stuck there. So I play the mission. It's a breeze. It's a cakewalk. No problems at all. I don't lose any power level, so my power grid is still maxed out. And then it's the classic video game boss battle trope, too good to be true. There's a second stage to this final mission. You drop down into the core of the Earth, and you have to protect a bomb that is arming, which will take out the insect's hive and save the world.
Okay.
And here's where the difficulty spikes. I'm losing buildings left and right. This mission, which took place over 4 or 5 turns, probably took me like 45 minutes. I was contemplating these turns for so long because you're getting overwhelmed with bugs. And I think in one turn, I lose like more than half of my entire power grid level because they just decimate buildings.
And this game saves after every action, right?
That is correct. Every time you hit end turn, there's no going back.
And it's like a roguelike in which your faults carry over.
I'm at the climax of this run. So once win or lose after this battle, my game is over. following this match, I will have to start a game mostly from scratch. I get to bring one pilot along who survived the previous run. After a very tense finish, I end up being successful, actually. I beat the final mission on normal. It gives you a fun, kind of breakdown how many people you saved on Earth, what the Earth's total population is. And then it introduces me to what the kind of persistent elements of the game are. The game has kind of cool achievement integration. You're not just unlocking achievements on Steam for bragging rights or just as kind of a additional layer of metagaming. There's some in-game rewards for completing achievements. You get a currency for every achievement you complete, 1 gold coin. And in between games, you can spend these gold coins on unlocking new mech squads to take into future games. And just looking at the main menu, there's a total of 10 different unique mech squads, and they give you a little description of each. And they're wildly different, to the point where I've actually started and completed my second playthrough with one of the squads I unlocked. This new group of mechs, they're all about manipulating steam, I think is what it's called. You get to place these clouds over hexes all across the map, and anytime either you or an opponent is in the same hex with steam, it cancels your attack.
It depletes your bank account.
You don't necessarily need to maneuver the insects out of harm's way. You can just hit them with a cloud of smoke. It's not called steam, it's actually called smoke. My bad. And that'll disable their attack. So they're wildly different. Another group I unlocked, they're all about making the insects kill one another, doing your dirty work for you. So that's fun. Obviously, some of the more expensive mech teams are presumably less beginner-friendly because you'll only unlock them after having beaten the game a couple times. Because changing your mech squad so fundamentally alters how you interact with the game and how you complete each mission, it's almost like playing a different game. So just taking a new mech squad into your next run, tons of replayability. I'm going to be playing this game for a while, so I hope you listeners enjoy getting Into the Breach updates, because there are foreseeably going to be many more. And there's a feature where you can create your own custom squad, cherry-picking different mech classes from across their predefined mech squads and build your own custom perfect mech squad. That seems cool. So yeah, just no criticisms yet for Into the Breach. I'll say that my second playthrough, I played on easy just to test it out. It loses a lot of its tension playing on easy. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised having beaten the game once on normal. I kind of know what I'm doing. But I'm glad there's an easy difficulty setting to add to its accessibility.
What I really appreciate about this game is the deflation of it. You told me how each round has it's over in 5 to 10 turns. It's a very condensed version of chess. And just when you were talking about how the in-game currency that you earn, it's 1 gold coin. I don't know if that's just I've been inundated by earning 1,000 such and such for this quest, or my Pokemon in Pokemon Go having 3,000 is the combat power cap. I really just like how it's you get 1 gold coin, you got 1 health point. Would you agree that Into the Breach kind of artfully balances their game to be simple and flexible?
Yeah, I rarely, if ever, I don't think I've seen a single 2-digit number in this game.
Sick.
If that makes sense. And I think you said matches usually are between 5 to 10 turns. It's actually matches are between 3 to 5 turns. They're that short. But yeah, so recommended. Make some time for it if you can, Heath.
Well, here's the thing. You said, I'm going to be playing this for a while. And this podcast has influenced my gaming practices. I'm sure they have as for you too. So I don't think I'll be playing this anytime soon. I think that you've kind of absorbed it into your docket, and so I don't want much how we don't want this to be a Hyperlight Drifter podcast. I don't want every week to be like, man, remember when you killed the bug with the steam? I think I'm gonna get to Into the Breach into the 3-digit episode numbers after we've all forgotten about how amazing you were in the final mission. Same goes for what's another fun game that you were talking about?
Dishonored: Death of the Outsider.
Yeah, I may just. These are just like U-turns after hundreds of miles. Once like people have, just to give them new content, because I don't want to come back every episode and be like, "Hey, I played Detroit. Hope you're ready to hear another 40 minutes about that."
Right. That's very reasonable, and probably our listeners probably appreciate this added consideration you're making when you curate your list of games. With that said, you should come back and talk to me for my own benefit about a Yakuza game or a Danganronpa, because I will love that conversation.
You know, it's funny that you mention Yakuza and Danganronpa, because both of those games have something to do with my question for today, if we get to it.
Foreshadowing.
Leave that hint right there.
Okay, I had my first move to talk about a game. Why don't we turn it over to you?
Okay. All right, you want to know? Actually, I'll lame it out. I've been playing more HQ, and the reason I'm bringing it up this episode is because Season 2 of their point system begins today at 9 p.m. During the holidays, they had that system where if you level up, even if you get a question wrong, you will stay in the game as long as the question number is less than that or equal to your level. And I got to level 10. I don't think I mentioned that before the holidays. I got to level 10 and ended up winning twice during that season. I won
You hit the level cap.
I did hit the level cap. It wasn't that difficult. I had won before I reached the level cap the first time. And I think the first question right, it's like 100 points, and then 200, and then 400. So it adds up. And to get to level 10, you need 50,000 points. I achieved that pretty doably within, I think it was like 9 days of a season. This season is 38 days. It has the same progression system as far as I know. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm certain that as the season gets later and later, we're going to end up with 7,000 winners, 9,000 winners, and the payout's going to be reaching like maybe even single-digit cent values.
That's because people could potentially be benefiting from the max level cap benefit for longer.
The further we get into the season, more folks are going to be reaching levels 9 and 10, at which point you only need to answer 2 questions correct to win the game and split the payout. So I'm expecting win inflation. People who would have gotten out otherwise are going to coast, or their levels are going to carry them to round 10. And although it may affect the payout, that's not why we play HQ. We play HQ for the sick pop-offs. Unfortunately, I haven't recorded myself winning on stream, but that is the plan going forward. So I played a little HQ, and I'm looking forward to the beginning of Season 2 tonight.
Excellent. And you'll have to report back to us with how the incredibly much longer season influences the game's results.
Yeah, you'll hear about it. I mean, hopefully I'll have just like the most toxic things to say, because HQ's just kind of been like it's like my relaxing game. You know, some people play, what's a relaxing game that people play?
Stardew Valley.
Yes, it's my Stardew Valley. I should play Stardew Valley.
Would you also call Civ 5 your relaxing game?
Yes. I mean, probably even more so, just going by the amount of time spent. You know, I'm only on HQ like 2 hours a day, whereas in Civ 5, you know, I'll dedicate like half of a weekend. Yeah, good call.
Okay, I'll take the reins back for a second.
Please do, because the next 2 games I played are trash.
Okay, this next game I'm talking about is trash in its own very unique way.
Great.
I'd like to consider myself as having a pretty eclectic taste in games. I'll try just about anything. I like to think I bring a wide array of different games and genres to talk about on this show.
Cue the 90-minute Leisure Suit Larry TED Talk by Chris Salmon.
Not quite, but in a similar vein to some extent. So, the game I've brought to talk about today, a little bit out of left field for me personally, let's have a conversation about Bayonetta 2.
Now that's not nearly as much of a wild card as I thought it was going to be.
But Bayonetta 2 is a very strange case for me, and let me explain why. So, just some background for the listeners. Bayonetta will become a 10-year-old franchise this year. The original game came out in 2009 on only the 360 and the PS3. And then it was pretty quiet for a while. The sequel finally came out thanks to Nintendo's intervention. It kind of got funded by Nintendo and became part of Nintendo's exclusive lineup.
This is an M-rated game, right?
Oh yeah, it is a very M-rated game.
How many other M-rated games does Nintendo greenlight? Not many.
None come to mind. It's a game that like flies in the face of everything Nintendo stands for. So interesting decision on their part. But Bayonetta 2 originally released on the Wii U in 2014, and the version I played is the Switch port, which came out last year. My history with Bayonetta is very minimal. I never touched it until the PC port of the original game arrived in 2017, and I finally got around to playing it in 2018, and honestly, it's a game that was like critically praised at the time, and it just didn't do it for me. It's a character action game developed by Platinum Games. You'll know Platinum Games from other character action games such as Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Oh yeah.
Nier Automata. I think they made a Ninja Turtles game, which was not received well. You don't know what you're going to get with Platinum. Sometimes you get that 90-plus score on Metacritic cult hit. Sometimes you get utter garbage, like The Legend of Korra. They're a wild card. Anyway, Bayonetta, played it on the PC, the original, last year. It was so difficult. I played through like the first quarter of the game on normal, and then to preserve my own sanity, I turned it down to easy. But it wasn't a very happy compromise because I went from too hot to too cold, if you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I was getting really frustrated on normal, but then easy was just mash buttons and you'll win no matter what. It was no challenge, no tension. The combat system was kind of obtuse to me to an extent. It had a whole bunch of combos, and I find that kind of intimidating. So it was a series that I had written off. I had no intention of playing further. And then something changed. I came across some discussions online where people were vouching for Bayonetta 2 so much, going so far as to say that even if you outright disliked Bayonetta 1, 2 is such an improvement over the original that you should give it a shot. So that's exactly what I did. I decided to pick up the sequel. And honestly, I'm glad I did. The fact that I liked Bayonetta 2 so much more than the original is almost baffling to me because they are like fundamentally on paper. Bayonetta 2 is just more of the same. They do not like reinvent the formula here. It is more walk from area to area, kill all the enemies in a boxed off room, and then move to the next one. A very linear, pure action game. Kind of in the style of Devil May Cry. You get a rating at the end of every encounter you fight.
From F to S?
It goes bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and then pure platinum.
Oh, what games use the letter system? Like Metal Gear, right?
Yeah, I believe Metal Gear does, and probably Devil May Cry as well.
And Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah, the trifecta of lettered scoring games.
Yeah.
So it's fundamentally the same, but I guess what I attribute to enjoying the game so much more is that they must have reworked this nebulous term I'm going to use right now, the game feel, I'm going to say in quotation marks. The game feel is what I would define as it's greater than the sum of its parts. You're like talking about the controls themselves, the animations you're seeing on screen, the visual and audio feedback you receive with every input you make, how enemies like react to you. I was able to get into a flow state during the combat in a way during Bayonetta 2 that I was never able to achieve while playing Bayonetta 1. I think they had to have turned the difficulty down because I was loving it on normal. It was just right for me. Once again, that not too hot, not too cold. It's like into the breach level of finely tuned difficulty.
Nice.
I don't know whether to attribute it to maybe like one of the main mechanics in Bayonetta is witch time, which is if you dodge at the instant before an enemy attack would make contact, you go into like a few seconds of slow motion where you can really punish the enemies. Maybe the enemies like telegraph their moves a little more blatantly in the sequel, so I was more easily able to anticipate their attacks and dodge. I don't know if like the window for the dodge was widened because I would get into these crazy combos of I was like a live ballerina just effortlessly slipping through the cracks of all these attacks. It's a pure power fantasy game.
Well, the music is really good, so even if the combat stunk, you might still be flying like a ballerina.
Absolutely. I thought Bayonetta 1's, one of its redeeming factors was a strong soundtrack, and I like Bayonetta 2's soundtrack even better. Tomorrow Is Mine and Moon Rivers were two standouts to me. Bayonetta herself is a fun character to spend time with. She oozes confidence out of every single pore.
Right, because the enemies are like these near God. Imagine just sticking like an upside down face on a clock with like grotesque limbs, and they're all like, Bayonetta, you're gonna burn for this, and she's all like, tough love, cupcake, or whatever. You want to chime in here, Chris? What does she sound like?
Yeah, she's super sarcastic, sassy. She's constantly throwing in innuendo. She's definitely got like the sexy librarian kind of thing going for her. She oozes confidence, as I said. You get the distinct impression that every encounter you face throughout the game, she's not even breaking a sweat. The enemies, as you talked about, they're supposed to be like angels, but they've got these weird like marble statue baby faces that are turned upside down, plastered onto them. They're kind of weird, creepy.
I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Jesus a playable character in this universe?
No, I would say not. The story, I never skip a cutscene. I read all the subtitles. I paid attention to this plot. It's nearly incomprehensible. I'm sorry. If there are people out there who play Bayonetta for the plot, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. It provides the faintest of justifications to shepherd you between different combat situations. But I don't fault it for having the ridiculous plot because it is completely self-aware about it. It does not take itself seriously, and it revels in the ridiculousness. And some of the cutscenes just trying to comprehend what is going on the screen, it's kind of enjoying for that aspect of it.
There's grounded characters in this game, right? There's like Bayonetta's love interest, the journalist.
I would not describe anyone in this game as grounded.
Okay.
You have Enzo, the fat, super stereotypical Italian. You have Luca, who is the journalist you're talking about, who is constantly, his thing in the sequel is that he like flies in it on a rope in like seemingly impossible situations like all the time. And he jokes about how like it's seemingly impossible that he's being able to keep up and follow along with what's going on. There's time travel going on. It's not the reason you play Bayonetta. You play it for the combat.
Yeah, who would you recommend this game for?
Yeah, it's a game I enjoyed immensely, but I struggle with who to recommend it to.
Everyone who played Bayonetta 1, but like, then who do you recommend the series to?
I actually don't recommend that anyone necessarily goes back and plays Bayonetta 1 in 2019.
Oh, it's like the first gen Pokemons.
Bayonetta 2 whatever good is in Bayonetta 1 is also in Bayonetta 2, except there's a whole lot more of it. To some extent, I appreciated Bayonetta 2 more because I had a lackluster time playing the first one, but I don't think it's anything you need to subject yourself to.
Okay. Well, Chris, you mentioned how Bayonetta 1 was difficult in its execution. I will take that segue into another game that I tried to get back into, but was unable to by no fault of my own, Hotline Miami. So I played it, I booted it up because I'm currently in Florida for the next 4 months and was hoping that, because my Hotline Miami free trial expires the 31st. And I have the sequel too. So I really wanted to get the full experience, but it is just one of the greatest barrier for entry games I've ever played. The combat system, as simple as it is, punch. I started playing with the mouse and keyboard, right? As previously I played with the Xbox controller and punch was like the right bumper and that just didn't gel with my brain.
Right.
Left click the mouse to punch makes more sense. Didn't make me perform any better. All I was doing in this game is pressing shift to see guys in the other room and trying to plan things out, trying to into the breach my way through these nightclubs. And all I would do is wait for somebody to get close to a door. I'd smash the door. I'd run in, try to hit the guy in the middle of the room, and then someone I didn't see would come in and just blast me because it's one hit kill for you. And I know this is just kvetching, but I really want to stress how Broforce. It was really difficult, but I knew I could do it deep down, and the game was so endearing, kept me going the whole way. Hotline Miami, there's not enough exploits in the world to get me through this light speed gameplay that I am just incapable of wrapping my head around. I have 4 masks that I have since unlocked. None of them do it for me. I choose the fist guy. He punches a little bit better, but that doesn't matter when the third guy on the couch gets up and just blasts me from a distance. And then I choose the guns guy, and I'm messing up inputs. Hitting a guy with a door just knocks him back. It doesn't necessarily incapacitate him, so that he gets back up. And while I'm doing the punchy takedown on the second guy, he comes and finishes me off. And I got to know the R key really well. You know what the R key does?
I do not know.
Restarts the level. All I was doing was just going through the same level. It's called Decadence, if anyone wants to look it up. The story, really cool. You know how you get this phone call and I'm not necessarily sure who it's from, and still the first level you play, you get visited by these people in masks and you're half sure if they're real or not. And like I said, with the shopkeepers, I'm so interested in the world of Hotline Miami, and I know that the sequel takes it to a really cool place. It does a film set kind of thing. My line of work, that should totally gel with me, but I don't think I will ever get to Hotline Miami 2. I'm going to let this free trial I got through Twitch Prime expire. I'm done with the series. Devolver, next. I would drop my mic, but I spent a lot of money on it.
Fair enough. So, because Hotline Miami has such a super straightforward control scheme, the difficulty comes from they expect you to have such mastery of it and such fast reflexes that they just throw the entire kitchen sink at you.
I don't know, man, because there's like the lock-on feature in which you can put your cursor on a guy from a room over, and then I anticipate it's like Deadeye in Red Dead, how if you plan everything out and you got enough execution to line up some headshots, you should totally be able to clear a room and then backtrack if people from the other room heard the gunshots and just like know your exit strategy. It's pretty simple, and I'm looking at these walkthroughs on YouTube, but I'm here's how I'll phrase it. If you made a bet with me that if I could beat this game in 1 hour, you'd give me like $24,000. And if I beat it in 2, you'd give me $23,000. And it's still like deduct $1,000 for every hour. You wouldn't have to pay me any money. There's no chance I could beat this game in 24 hours, even though like the time to beat's probably like 8. Insurmountable difficulty. I beat Broforce on hard. I will never beat Hotline Miami. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I just ranted on top of it, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows that me, Heath, pro gamer that I am, I don't have time for this.
It's funny how playing a game with exactly the same mechanics, exactly the same level design, but then tweaking the difficulty such that whether it's up or down, just a little bit, could like really alter how enjoyable of an experience it is for you. Like, is this a game that if it was maybe 25% less difficult, you'd think you'd have a lot of fun with?
Or just some sort of mechanic that would make my life a lot easier if there was like a slowdown. If it was like super hot levels of slowdown, maybe. I'm certain there's a mask that just gives you like 10 frames of invincibility every time you sneeze, but I'm never going to get the chance to unlock it.
Got it.
Do ya? Tell me if I'm not making sense.
I think you are. And you also followed up on your promise. You said a few episodes back you would return to Hotline Miami. I think you've given the game a fair shake at this point.
Yeah, because like these Devolver games, the Messenger wasn't my cup of tea, but I saw the teach you the mechanics and grow on that. And I played, what was the other Devolver game I was playing? I mean, Broforce, yeah, they published it, but when you say Devolver, I think of quality games. It's just Hotline Miami is the one black eye, even though it's probably the most recognizable.
Got it.
You want to hear about Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. What were you going to say, Heath?
Well, now that I'm all fired up, I was gonna end my week by talking about the other game that I played.
Hit me with it.
Well, I don't think if you could even. Some people are gonna call into question me calling it a game because I installed Tinder on my phone a week ago, and I've been having a blast with that. I have some stats for you. Would you consider Tinder a game? We should get that out of the way.
The Reigns game series uses a mechanic of swiping left and right, so that is also present in Tinder. I don't think I have enough proof right now to dismiss the claim that Tinder is a game.
Which is okay.
I also don't have enough proof right now to dismiss the claim that life itself is a game.
Okay, well, with that foundation, let's get into it. I spent 7 hours over the last 7 days on my phone using Tinder. And although that might sound like a lot to some people, the first day when I was just setting up my profile, that was like 3 hours. So, this the average is like less than an hour each day, which even then might be a lot to some. But if you're listening to this podcast...
Is your bio like 3 pages long? 3 hours is a long time to set up a profile.
It's MLA format, my bio. It has perfect syntax. You should totally read it. It's already nominated for a Peabody. No, I mean, I was trying to make sure, because I don't take many pictures of myself alone. Well, what am I going to do? Put a picture of me playing Horizon Zero Dawn? I'd get no matches. Actually, I did earn 2 matches over that 7-day period. A couple reasons for that. You might think 2 matches is too low, because I'm so handsome. But a couple reasons are the age of the account. Not everybody's seen it. You'd also think of Tinder's active users, and I looked it up. Tinder has like a subscription service that allows you to use their microtransaction super likes and boosts that help you get matches, which is
the microtransactions,
right? Which adds to the clause that it is a game that I played, so it's fair game for this podcast. Also, because it's just funny to talk about. So I looked up a statistic. Tinder has over, is it 4,000? Oh, you're gonna make me look it up. Tinder's been around for like 5 years now, right?
I want to say 2012.
Yeah, so
I can fact check that.
So it's been a while. Maybe, not as many people are on it, which is why I'm not getting like a bunch of matches. There's currently 57 million users around the world, not necessarily active, but users. And also I'm living in Orlando, which is a metropolitan area. It's got Disney World. There were actually a lot of cheerleaders that came for national competitions. So, that might be inflating my player pool, to use a game analogy, my lobby. So that's another reason why, the number of matches I've gotten. I have a narrow search radius. So if you have a Tinder account, you can select people that you're looking for. Because, primarily I installed this so that I could find friends in my housing complex. Because remember when we were in college and like your RA would get everybody on the hallway and that you'd all do an icebreaker and you'd say like, oh, what are you bringing to the picnic? And do like a dance move to learn everybody's name. Did you do some of that in college?
Yeah, icebreaker activities.
They didn't do that for us at Disney. They did have a party, live music and a hula hoop contest, but not necessarily learning anybody's names, especially the people living right across from me, like my door. So I have no idea who's my neighbors. So I was like, I'm gonna go on Tinder because, the nearby location services of like other social media apps like Instagram and Snapchat, they'll show you posts relative to that location, but it's not necessarily like, hey, you live in building 6, want to come over and play Quiplash? Not necessarily saying that Tinder is the perfect solution, but it allowed me to narrow my search. So I was only going through through candidates within a 10-mile radius, and it can go up to like 50 if you're super thirsty. But so that's another reason. Lastly, I only got 2 matches is my fastidiousness. There is a button.
Could you explain?
Oh, fastidious means like very meticulous and attentive to specific details.
Are you saying you have high standards?
I mean, listen, there's a button on the app that allows you to unmatch with someone. So, like you're going through people's profiles and there's only 2 options, swipe right or swipe left. Swipe right if you like them, swipe left if you want to disregard them.
Or the super like functionality also exists.
Well, I'm not going to give Tinder my bank account. I'm not that lonely.
You get one of them per 24 hours.
Okay. I will have to take advantage of that.
For the real winners out there, don't waste it.
Right. Everybody tuning in for my Tinder advice. So if you like a person and the recipient of your like also likes you, you have earned a match, which brings up a chat message window where you can talk to your match partner. There is a button, though, that allows you to unmatch with that person and basically exit the chat room if things don't click. And I was hoping to never have to hit that button or have that button pressed on me. So I was being very meticulous on who I liked. I wish it gave you the stats on the number of people that you swipe right on, but I'm certain with how thirsty some millennials are, it would break the servers. I only got 2 matches. Considering it as a game, the replayability, I don't think it's really there. In those 7 days, My lowest was only for 4 minutes on Saturday. I didn't touch it except for 4 minutes. Then my usage spiked after I matched with Sadie, who's super pretty, and the next day it went up to like an hour because I was thinking of like what to say. I don't think Tinder is necessarily. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's helping me meet total strangers because my housing complex isn't gonna help me do that. Do you have any questions?
Maybe this is just funnier in my head, but the level of care and attention to detail you seem to be approaching Tinder with is infinitely amusing to me.
Well, I wanted to, part of this is just making it listenable for the podcast, but also part of it is like, yeah, I don't want to blow this.
For sure. I have a recommendation in the same genre of game for you.
What is this, Farmers Only?
I won't claim to know exactly what your intentions are, but if one of your intentions is to just meet people and make friends, I think there's an app called Bumble, which has a specific mode where you can look for exclusively platonic friendships with like other dudes if that interests you.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not getting any dudes on Tinder.
Right.
I'm just playing Smash with my roommates and dunking on them on the daily. So yeah, I think Bumble might be something I could try.
And you'll be well versed in the mechanics already. Swipe
Good.
left or swipe right.
Okay. That was my week.
That's a pretty good week. More jam-packed than last week. Okay, I was debating whether or not to throw this final game I played this week in, but I've decided to throw it in. It's a short one. I've been doing a lot of game playing this year. Every week I come back to record this podcast, and it seems like I've knocked out a new game and completely finished it. Whether it was Wolfenstein 2, then Detroit Become Human, then Bayonetta 2, and now the next game, yeah?
Well, I was going to say, it's keeping these episodes alive, so what's this week's?
This week was primarily Bayonetta 2, but what's coming up probably next week is the 2017 version of Prey.
Oh.
Yeah, so Prey, I think there is another game called...
The multiplayer game?
Prey is primarily... The version I'm playing is primarily single player. I think there was a Prey game that came out in 2006. It shares a name with the game I'm playing, but they're more or less completely different. Published by Bethesda, developed by, you'll recognize this name, Arcane Studios. The guys behind Dishonored.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in doing a little background info on Prey, I Googled Arcane Studios, looked at their Wikipedia page. They've been around longer than I thought they had been. It was surprising for me to see that they assisted on development on Call of Duty World at War.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, they were like an external studio that like came in to help support development on that. It was primarily developed by Treyarch.
Right.
And then they also assisted development on BioShock 2.
Is that the best one?
Most people probably put it as the weakest of the BioShock games, but it's a very apt game for them to have worked on, considering how much of a BioShock vibe I am getting from Prey during my initial 90 minutes of playing so far. It's a game I would throw into the immersive sim category along with Dishonored or a BioShock or a Deus Ex.
You should also put it in the retro futurism category because it, much like Wolfenstein, it does a remix of history. I'm reading the Wikipedia page. It says that JFK lives his assassination?
Yes, it's alternate history. JFK survives his assassination attempt, which then goes on to...
do? Just more space stuff?
The space race between the U.S. and Russia, it's a much bigger deal.
It escalates,
than it is in our reality. Yeah, it escalates. Which leads to this space station being created, and which is where the game takes place. Really cool synthy soundtrack so far. Cool opening to the game. I'm not going to spoil it because the story is going some places, and it seems like it's the kind of story that is going to play with your expectations and surprise you, which I love. That's like 95% of the reason I play the Danganronpa games.
Right.
Everyone who talks about Prey mentions the fact that the initial enemies you face, they're an alien species, this like black little blob, but they can also masquerade as any inanimate objects in your environment.
Oh, this is Prop Hunt.
Prop Hunt. Yeah, so like in a Bioshock game.
No, talk about Prop Hunt. Forget Bioshock. All right, I'm taking over. So Gary's mod was a expansion, like a physics sandbox expansion of the Half-Life games, right?
I think so. It's made using the Source engine, I believe.
Right. So Valve it was like, here, play with this. And folks have designed their own games, including Hidden, in which it's like team versus one invisible player. And it's basically what ended up becoming Dead by Daylight. And Prop Hunt, you can take the model of any object in the field, like whether it be a potted plant or like a 100-gallon propane tank, and actually the larger you are, the more points you earn lying in plain sight. This is what this game is Prey just Prop Hunt?
There are more conventional enemies as well, but these aliens called Typhons, typically in a Bioshock or say a Dishonored, part of the gameplay is like combing through an environment, looting drawers, gathering supplies. And what Prey does is it takes this relatively mundane gameplay loop and inserts a whole bunch of tension to it, because at any single second, this apple or this newspaper you're about to pick up could be an enemy. And if you try to reach for it without like whacking it with your wrench first, it's going to get like an ambush on you and do a whole bunch of damage.
I like that. You know how boring it was when you found out synths in Fallout 4 were just people?
Yeah, definitely.
I totally wish synths were like this shape-shifting Prey thing you're talking about.
Right. So I've only played like the opening 90 minutes or so, but you can expect more impressions to be forthcoming in a future episode of Mobius Tubes.
Great. All right. We transition to what next? Can I talk about one culture thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Video Game Donkey, the YouTube's king of video game. He's basically the foremost opinion. He came out with his top 10 games of 2018, and I just wanted to give a couple pats on the back for
I've actually
analogous
watched
picks.
This video.
All right, so you know what's coming. Chris, you get a point for God of War. That was his number one pick for the top 10 list. I get a point for the Jackbox Party Pack that he included, and then you also get a point for Into the Breach.
Yay.
Surprising number of shmups on that list.
Yeah, he had some obscure picks.
Yeah. Anyway, that was it.
I guess shmups rustle his jimmies in just the right way.
I guess so.
Okay, I think you mentioned you have a compelling question for me.
Chris, you want to hear my question?
Nothing would make me happier.
All right, I don't have data for this one, but I gotta know, why do Japanese games have to be so Japanese? This is pure anecdotal.
I think I can guess what you're about to dive into.
Can you? Because I was watching a Let's Play on the Wooly Versus channel. He's been doing Katamari Damacy Reroll, which is the re-release of the original Katamari game, which was developed in 2004.
For the PlayStation 2.
Right. I should mention, dude, my roommate in Orlando loves Crash Team Racing and is so excited for the re-release.
Those people are out there, I'm telling you. There's dozens of us.
Nah.
Dozens.
Yes, you're right, yeah. So, Katamari, the gameplay is so good. We talked about relaxing games in the beginning of the show. All you're doing is rolling up a ball. And this is straight off the cafeteria table in your elementary school. All you're doing is rolling a ball, making it bigger by assimilating small objects at first, like a thumbtack or a grape. They did surgery on a grape. And then you grow to encompass things as large as skyscrapers. And it's just how big can you get the Katamari, the ball, before the time runs out. And it's got a great soundtrack. It's like the most fun game, and it's got like a quirky attitude to it, but there's no chance I'm ever going to break this out for any Tinder matches soon because of how weird the King of the Cosmos character is. Can you help me explain why this game is so weird?
I'm pulling up an image of the King of the Cosmos.
Well, he's just okay. So you're like the Prince of Earth, and this eccentric king of the cosmos goes on a rampage and knocks out all of the stars in the sky. And essentially you're rolling up these balls of garbage so that you can launch them into this atmosphere to replace all the stars he wrecked. And he's got like this weird wide face. You know that wide neck guy?
He looks like a face stapled onto a kaleidoscope is what I'm getting from him.
And like it's the gameplay itself is pretty fine. It's pretty global. There's not really too many niche Japanese things you're rolling into the Katamari, but the overarching theme, because this king comes in during the dialogue and even during the tutorial, you're learning how to control the ball it's rolling and how to pivot to make the most of your movement. If you point the camera up, you can see him creepily peering into the arena that you are having the tutorial in. Kita Takahashi, the developer of the game, he's clearly the king of originality. He's only like 43, but it's just so weird. And, you know, a little history. Capcom saw the success of Katamari Damacy and wanted to make it a series. But Kita did not want to do that, and he just wanted to, like, be an artist. And Capcom's like, well, we're just going to make it whether you like it or not, so you can be a part of it or just watch your baby, you know. And he's like, all right, fine. And so they made it again and again, and he just gets strung along for the ride. And it never really completely captures. This was a one-hit wonder. It should never have become a series, because it's so original and so creative, but it's also just so weird. So getting back to the point, why do other games like Yakuza, maybe this is a little unfair to say, why can't this game that takes place in Japan not take place in Japan? Because it's so cool, Goro Majima, and the edginess to it, but also like the flamboyancy. But then this karaoke stuff and the weird Japanese tropes. I haven't played this game or looked into it nearly as much as the other games I want to talk about. But maybe you can provide some insight. Like, why don't we have games like Katamari and Yakuza and Ace Attorney? You know that game, right? You're doing evidence-based objections in a court of law. But all the cases are like just very Eastern.
Is your overarching question, why are Japanese games so wacky?
There are Japanese games that aren't wacky. You know, like I think Pokemon and like Mario, obviously. But then there's games like Metal Gear. And is it unfair to just blanket all these games with like a wacky component as being Japanese? Or is that like have some credit to it?
Okay, I have a few thoughts. I don't think I'm going to like provide this super definitive, insightful answer that cuts to the heart of the question. But just a couple observations I would make are, we're coming at these games with a very ingrained American perspective. Some of the wackiness is probably just inherent to the fact that we are not entrenched in Japanese culture. Things that are seemingly normal or mundane in Japan could strike us as out of the ordinary. And some of these, the themes and the segments of these games are probably maybe coming across as even stranger than they are because of our difference in culture. Like, there's a cultural barrier that they are leapfrogging over, and our perspective is that they're wacky, and I'm certain that many of them are considered wacky in Japan as well. But I bet that effect is magnified for us with our very Western perspective.
I'm not trying to be xenophobic, but I just want to introduce Katamari to my friends and watch somebody play Undertale. Now, Heath, why are you mentioning Undertale? It's made by an American. Well, yeah, but Toby Fox got influenced by Mother 3 or Earthbound or whatever that series is. Part of the reason why Undertale is so great is because it has those Japanese elements, but it's, like you said, I am so removed from that culture, even though I could name drop all of these Japanese games and appreciate them for what they are. I recognize that it does not translate to the layperson.
And speaking of translate, I bet some of the clarity is potentially lost during the translation process because they have to make the jump from Japanese to English for us to be able to understand it. And that's not a perfect process.
I mean, that's the least of my worries. Language aside, I just want to get through Undertale and not have to try to explain what a tsundere plane is, even though it's one of the funniest encounters in that game. Do you not know about the tsundere plane?
Yeah, why don't you fill me in?
All right, so you come across these enemies and you have to act with them to spare them. That's Undertale's whole mechanic. And this one you come across in the late game is called a tsundere plane. Do you know what like tsundere means in Japanese? Is it like cute or shy? It has to be, because the joke is it's this personified airplane called a tsundere plane. And the joke is that the plane itself is like a shy girl that wants your attention, but is also like, ew, gross. And the gameplay mechanic has you getting your cursor close to the plane, but not touching. It's sort of like showing your affection, but also not crossing any boundaries. And if you do that correctly, the tsundere plane starts to blush, and it has dialogue lines that are like, I guess you're okay. Clearly there's a joke to be made about just Japanese relationships and culture, but there's funny parts of that game that I can't be like, hey, whoever I'm showing this to, oh, that's a joke on, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I actually
freaking Alphys's whole storyline, how she loves anime. I don't want, I just want to filter Undertale so it has all the cool skeleton stuff and the bird that carries you over a small gap, and I just want to take all the Japanese stuff like inspiration and make it understandable for my audience, not the audience that listens to me, but like the people I want to share Undertale with,
the normies.
Because I've tried to explain this to my mom, and she's like, what? Sans what? Wrap this conversation up.
I wish that I could. I think I would actually enjoy a lot of the Japanese games I play a great deal less if you took the eccentricity out. I think it's part of their charm. Does this make them more niche? Does this make their appeal not as wide? Probably, definitely in a Western context, sure. I understand your disappointment that they limit their mass appeal by kind of incorporating the more Japanese elements. But I would counter and say there's plenty of other great games out there that you could also introduce the layperson to and maybe work their way up to something more strange like a Katamari Damacy.
I mean, yeah, I could design a flowchart that's first play, Sonic.
I would scrap any flowchart that incorporates Sonic in it.
We will revisit this question, I'm sure.
This is a question I might have more to say after having some time to reflect on it.
Good, because, these Japanese games, they do gangbusters, and it's but I can't explain it to people who don't know.
And you say they're doing gangbusters. That's there was definitely a period of kind of a lull where Japanese games were no longer at the forefront of the gaming industry. I'd say during like the 360 PS3 era. Do you know who Phil Fish is?
I've heard of him.
He made the game Fez, and he's a very like, I don't think people like him very much. And one of his famous quotes is that he said like Japanese games suck. And at the time, there weren't a whole lot of high profile Japanese games coming out. This was circa 2010 to 2012 or somewhere around there. But this generation, there's been like a pretty big resurgence. Nintendo's kind of back on the swing of things. We're getting Bayonettas, that's a Japanese game, and Nier Automata and Persona is back after a long absence. We got a Metal Gear game this gen, although probably many people wouldn't claim it's the best one. Yakuza is way more popular than it's ever been, despite the fact that it's existed for more than 10 years. I'm kind of just listing Japanese games I like, but there seem to be a whole lot more of them in the spotlight these days.
I guess my point of view is that I'm not wrong, but beggars can't be choosers.
Resident Evil is coming back as well. Like 5 and 6 were like the low point, and now this gen we're getting 7 and then Resident Evil 2 remake. It's
still like that game, and then like Final Fantasy. They're just the barrier for entry.
Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out after like a lifetime.
The
Last Guardian released after a lifetime. There seems to be a whole lot more right now.
Yeah.
Have we sufficiently delved into your question?
Oh yeah, way more than enough.
Okay. What would you prefer, Heath, for the duration of this podcast? We have 2 emails we need to address, which we are definitely doing. The only thing that's up for debate right now is whether I pose a question to you.
Do you think it's about the same level of discussion as the one I just did, or greater?
I would say it is on par with yours, if maybe like slightly longer. I'm fine either way.
I say go for the question, because let's just get this content out of there. I mean, next week I will have actually played a game, so I'll have something to talk about.
Yeah, I want Tinder updates. Keep me in the loop.
No, I meant you know what I meant.
Oh, you were gonna download Bumble. That's right.
No, actual games.
Now I'm more interested in this dating stuff.
All right, what's your game, or what question? What's your question?
Okay. If you pose this question on any random gaming-focused message board on the internet, it is 100% guaranteed to spark a raging debate. But we're going to hash it out definitively on this episode of Mobius Tubes. Are you ready?
I'm so, like, what could it be? Like, button placement?
That just for clarity, that was tongue-in-cheek. I don't think we're going to come to a definitive answer right here. But without further ado, Heath, what is the definition of an RPG?
It's a game in which, from start to finish, you are playing as a character that undergoes some change or journey.
I think you're basically saying you play a game in which your character progresses and develops in some way.
Yes. Like if you were following like a TV show, the character, it's just got to be a game in which the character undergoes some arc, and the gameplay mechanics could be anything.
So RPG literally stands for role-playing game. And I think interpreting it at face value as what those words literally mean is not necessarily what people use the term RPG to describe. During our Detroit Become Human spoiler cast, at one point you said something like, you called maybe Heavy Rain a role-playing game because you take on the role of this specific character and you get to make decisions as them and kind of flesh them out and develop them into a more nuanced character. And I would definitely not consider any of David Cage's games as role-playing games. I would put them more in like the adventure game category. Do you disagree with anything in that statement so far?
Yeah, I mean, I can see myself calling them role-playing games. I usually just call them decision games. But when I think of an adventure game, I think it's just a role-playing game in which the gameplay has to do with some sort of swordplay or gunplay or like a 2D Galaga shooter kind of thing. And I think adventure is just RPG with some sort of killing going on.
Okay.
Whereas Heavy Rain, it's like you're role-playing these characters and you're not necessarily swinging a sword. That's why it's not an adventure game. That's what I'm after.
So, like, putting these games into genre buckets it's kind of like an arbitrary exercise. I don't know how necessarily important this is, but I'd probably say RPGs are like my favorite genre if push came to shove. When you hear the term RPG, name a couple of the games that immediately come to mind?
Pokemon.
Yeah.
Skyrim.
That was one of mine, for sure. Final Fantasy.
I mean, I've never played one, but yeah.
Actually, neither have I, but... And within the RPG genre, there's a whole bunch of subgenres, whether we're talking JRPGs, Japanese RPGs,
Dark Souls,
Western RPGs, action RPGs, turn-based strategy RPGs. I'm not here to draw those lines, but I think it's fair to say there's like a couple... I'm going somewhere with this, trust me. There's a few conventions that RPGs like pretty normally have. I'll just rattle a couple off. Usually you have a character, whether it's a single character or a party, that are gaining experience, they're leveling up, and upon leveling up, they're getting skill points that you can allocate to some sort of, whether it's a skill tree or some other sort of progression system. You're growing your characters in that sense. You usually also acquire different like items, whether it's weapons and armor or potions, some sort of like inventory system that you can equip characters with different pieces of equipment. Usually they have quests, whether it's a main quest line or you go off the beaten path and acquire side quests or collectible missions, usually, but not always. I guess this is harping on the differences between the subgenres of RPG. JRPGs tend to be like more linear, while Western RPGs, your Skyrims or your Witchers,
sandboxes,
more of a sandbox approach where you can kind of go off in any direction you please. What kind of hung me up are the term like RPG elements. Those have been like bleeding into every genre under the sun for a while now, just because one of your favorite mechanics, big numbers go up, that's like a staple of RPGs, and that feels good. We like making tangible progress towards something. So like everything from Call of Duty's multiplayer progression system, that's like taking inspiration from what was typically associated with RPGs. Because of all this like bleeding into other genres, like even God of War 2018 has skill points you're spending in skill trees. Like what constitutes an RPG is
speech level 5
is becoming murkier and murkier. And the game that hung me up more than any other on whether or not it was an RPG, and I actually came to my final decision today, and I'm going to share my findings with you, and you're going to tell me whether or not I'm crazy.
Okay.
I was having trouble categorizing Horizon Zero Dawn as if it was an RPG or not.
Yeah, RPG, really poor game.
Oh, you take that back right now.
Well, what do you mean?
So I was going down like the checklist of role-playing game conventions, and it was checking all of the boxes. You level up in the game. After you kill enemies, you get experience. When you complete a quest, you get experience, and you get to put these skill points into a variety of skill trees. You get to grow your character that way. You've got all different kinds of armor sets you get to find or craft. Weapons, different types of bows and arrows, different types of elemental effects. They're not called enchantments, but you get these like enchantment orbs that you get to socket into your equipment to like improve them. There's a main quest line. There's side quests that you gather throughout your journey. They're all tracked in a meticulous log for you. In addition to main and side quests, there's collectible quests and like bandit camps to clear out and tall necks to climb. There's like a rarity system on the items you find. It was like checking all of the boxes. There's combat system. There's like pretty heavy emphasis on story, which is usually a staple of an RPG. Lots of dialogue, well voiced and acted. But the whole time I was playing, I had an uncomfortable feeling that it didn't feel right to call it an RPG, and I wasn't sure why until today. When I was thinking about this discussion, it kind of clicked for me. I had a eureka moment. And that is, an RPG has to have character development that you spec them into a certain build or a certain class, or you make them your own in a way. You tailor your character towards your own preferred play style. Why Horizon Zero Dawn does not meet this requirement is that by the end of the game, when you hit your level cap, you've acquired so many skill points that you've completed the skill tree. It's completely filled out. No piece of equipment is like off limits to you. You can equip anything. Mm-hmm. When I finished playing Horizon Zero Dawn, my max level Aloy is exactly the same as your max level Aloy. They're at the same power level. They don't play differently. What I'm thinking an RPG is like the classic 3-class system. You spec your guy into being a tank, so you absorb damage, or you spec yourself to be support or a rogue for high DPS. You're tailoring your character to fulfill a role, and your role is like how you approach the game.
Oh, not necessarily. You're a chef.
Right. So like not their in-lore role, but how you play role.
Oh, that's your definition?
That's my definition. So that would invalidate, say, like a Far Cry game, where it's the same deal. You're getting points to put into skill trees, but by the end of the game, you have all the skills. Your character is like every other person's max level Far Cry character. At the end of a Witcher 3 playthrough, there's a scarcity in how much you can acquire. So your character will play very differently from someone else's. Someone could be heavily spec'd into signs, so you use your magical abilities, and with like heavy armor, which, well, if you were doing a signs build, you would probably pick light armor, so you have faster stamina regeneration. But that's besides the point. You could then do a build for like alchemy, or a build for swordplay. And picking one of these routes and going down that path locks you out of other options, which is not the case in, say, a Horizon Zero Dawn or a Far Cry.
Are you saying Skyrim ain't an RPG?
I was mulling that over in my head, and Skyrim has a level cap, correct?
I don't think so.
Or if you're playing the game like in its vanilla state,
it's got like a soft cap, probably.
It gets like so.
I mean, Dark Souls has a soft cap, right?
I think so. It gets so much
insurmountably level,
so exponentially hard to continue to progress that you're effectively at a level cap, and at that point, I don't think you can like become super proficient at everything. So your character will be specialized to a certain degree. So I think Skyrim maintains its RPG status.
Okay. So your definition is contingent on specialization to the playable extent, not necessarily like sure, if you infinitely played Skyrim, you could probably max out all trees, but in a given playthrough, are you crossing the finish line with a character that's distinct from other people's characters?
That's kind of the definition I've made peace with for myself.
Because, like, I think of, like, Portal as an RPG.
I think you're completely
Off base.
you're in a minority of one. I think you're the only person who thinks that. Portal is a first-person puzzle game. It's in the puzzle genre.
But you play a role.
That gets back to what I was saying, how when people say RPG, they're not talking about its literal definition.
Job Simulator VR. Is that an RPG? You play as a cashier, and then you play as the cook, and then you play as the office guy.
It would make me more uncomfortable than calling Horizon Zero Dawn an RPG than calling that one.
Right.
To some extent, it's like a spectrum. You can be more of an RPG than another game. I don't think it's binary.
What is the most RPG game? Dark Souls?
Maybe.
Hey, what is Pokemon an RPG?
I think it is. Yeah, because you're building up a Pokemon party that's tailored to your playstyle.
Okay, but yeah, you could catch them all. That's the point.
I guess.
Everyone who catches them all has caught them all.
But you don't bring them all into a battle, right?
You're 6. Wait. Is Street Fighter an RPG?
No way. That's a fighting game.
You specialize your character by picking Sagat versus Ryu.
But one person's Ryu is equivalent to any other person's Ryu.
Nuh-uh. I got the best Hadoukens.
Can we move on before you find a good counterexample?
Oh, I would love to find a good counterexample.
Our listeners are going to have a field day writing in with all sorts of counterexamples.
Yeah, they're going to be like, what about Surgeon Simulator?
Speaking of our listeners, should we move on to emails?
Hey, well, Chris toggles the email. If you want to write into the podcast and have your question read aloud by either Chris or I, probably Chris, then you just need to send an email to mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com.
That was an excellent plug right there for our email address. And your email could be read just like this listener wanted to be addressed as Paco.
Hey, Paco.
He says he's been diligently listening to the podcasts, and
I hope he's enjoying them. You know, we spend a lot of time on these.
For sure. They're a labor of love. You do most of the labor.
Like a mother.
Yes.
All right, Paco time.
Right. He has a potential improvement for us. He says our podcast would be a lot more polished, a lot more official if we could incorporate some sort of theme song, some sort of jingle at the beginning and the end of the episode.
Hey, everybody, have you heard the news? It's Mobius Tubes. We got Chris and Heath. We're coming to you live. I have so many games inside of me that I gotta get out. I'll never have clout because I'm bad. Hotline Miami. Chris, save me. I'm in the insanity. Mom spaghetti.
So, Paco, you now have that to look forward to at the beginning and end of every episode going forward.
Does he have any suggestions? It's very easy to be like, you need a theme song. You also need better album art. Also have better voices.
I think it's just the absence of a opening theme that bothers him. I don't think he's too picky about its quality. I was thinking maybe like some sort of instrumental, maybe 8-bit chiptune jingle that lasts like 7 seconds or so.
Well, we should share with the listeners the other album art that I made that was retro-y chiptune look.
Yes. For a time, I think I liked that one even more than the one we landed on.
Okay.
Just so viewers can visualize it, the rings are more purple, and they look kind of like more vector-y. They're more straight lines, I'd say.
But yeah, that I also thought chip tune music, even with our current album art.
And maybe something vaguely spacey.
Okay, yeah.
I will leave that to you, Heath, if you get inspired.
Man, I'm never gonna. Paco's got me doing even more homework than I'm doing myself.
And Paco actually has a second question, although he wants us to both make a short case on why each of us should be considered the leader of Mobius Tubes.
Sowing the seeds of
discord.
Yeah, I'll go first. All right, Paco, you want to hear what I have to say? I mean, clearly, I put in the most amount of work into this podcast, and I am the voice of the people, whether I am writing love letters to Detroit or embellishing the friggin' Bandersnatch endings. That's what people are tuning in to listen to. I don't know what you can say to combat that, Chris, but good luck.
Everything Heath has said is very true. He puts in many more hours per week to get this podcast sounding very professional. He does all the audio editing. He is an invaluable resource, and you'd be getting a much lower quality product without him and his efforts. But Heath is like the workhorse of the podcast. He is the body. He's the vessel that contains us, while I am more of the soul because every week I actually play video games so that I can talk about them on this podcast.
Tinder's a video game.
I will never
As of today.
I will never bring my road trip story or my Tinder exploits to Mobius Tubes.
It
And that
felt
is why-
like a microtransaction.
And that is why I am the leader of Mobius Tubes. Thank you. Okay.
That was actually really good.
Thank you, Paco, for sowing irreparable damage between Heath and I's relationship.
I don't know. I don't know who's my favorite audience contribution. Paco's hilarious suggestions or Nathan's very necessary basketball wire aviation PSA.
Yeah, our listeners definitely make the show better. That segues us to our second and final email for this episode.
I love getting emails, man. This is great.
We should mention, I previewed the emails so I know what they're going to be, but Heath is hearing them for the first time on the podcast along with you. So his visceral reactions are coming to you live. This one comes from Nathan, who wrote into us last episode and also gave us the correction earlier this episode. So he is a very...
Yo, Nathan, this is awesome.
He's a very prolific email writer, and we appreciate that. Nathan says, "Dear Chris and Heath, great job on the podcast so far. I really enjoy listening to all of your unique and quite descriptive opinions on games and game news. I would love to see some guests in future shows to mix things up a bit. Question on the topic of guests. If you could have one guest on the show, be it a pro gamer, game developer, game company, exec, etc., who would it be and why? Cheers, Nathan." So Nathan is asking about the feasibility of potentially incorporating a guest in the future, and also asking us what our dream fantasy guest would be given the choice of anyone. I haven't asked Heath's opinion on this, but I'd be open to having a guest episode on once in a while. I have a person or two I think would give us a unique gaming perspective that's a little outside of the realm of Heath and I's. So that would be some nice added variety to bring to the podcast, spice things up a bit. Not that the Heath and Chris duo is going to be timeless, I'm sure, but once in a while you could use something fresh. What are your thoughts, Heath? You want to shoot it down right away?
I'm trying to think of like what because every ensemble podcasts are easy to boil the broadcasters down into their traits, whereas Chris, I would categorize as the more informative one and eloquent, especially when it came to comparing the games industry to the movies industry. That's still like going to be in the compilation for Mobius Tube's best of year one. Whereas I'm more geared toward the pathos of the show, and I'm trying to think of other roles that I've seen podcasts have. It's like a dichotomy that's so identifiable. Do you want me to actually name drop? I would want Brian David Gilbert to come on the show. He is a video producer at Polygon right now, but he's been making video game YouTube videos for the past couple years, and he's got the same passion and investigative quality that I think Chris has, as well as the chauvinism that I have. So I think he is my dream pick. Or maybe, he's like a game guy. He's in New York, so like maybe we could get him. I think maybe my like double dream pick would be Elon Musk, because he likes games, right? And he's a bit of a memester.
I know he likes marijuana, but probably games too.
Those are two people that come to mind for me.
You brought up a good point, Heath, that I hadn't like fully considered. Speaking about role-playing games, we have very different roles on this podcast. If there's a spectrum between, you mentioned pathos on one side of the spectrum, ethos on the other.
Well, you're logos.
Logos, yeah, that's the more appropriate word. We're on opposite ends of the spectrum, so we kind of...
The only reason that is, I don't mean to cut you off, but like the only reason that is because I am sort of like a chameleon, and I bet you are too, where if there was a figurative third person who was over the top and bombastic, I would button it up. I don't want to have to compete with that, so I would much more easily settle toward the middle, and you wouldn't hear nearly as many outbursts or hot takes as you currently do, because Chris, you are at that far end of the spectrum in the analytical and measured, if I could say so.
Thank you. Right, so a podcast needs a certain level of energy to be entertaining, and I'm definitely not pulling my weight to fill that vacuum, so you expand to fill it up, and that's a very valuable service you provide. And you're saying if there was a third player on the scene, you might back off a little bit, which makes sense.
Yeah, to be a sportsman, I would no longer be the quarterback. What am I trying to say? Like, if we were a team of sled dogs, I would migrate to the middle.
As far as my personal pick for a person, he's a person I respect in kind of the world of game news coverage, although he's not specifically in the news journalism aspect anymore. I would pick Danny O'Dwyer. Do you know him?
No.
Okay.
Does he have a fun internet name?
He was originally a personality at GameSpot. He did a web series called The Point, which were kind of like video essays. I thought they were very thoughtful. Topics ranging from like, what if you never play your favorite video game? And then it's like a motivational video to like go out and try different genres, things of that nature, to other videos where like, is the current emphasis on hype and trailers and excitement around video games? Are we revealing too much about them? Are we killing the sense of mystery that surrounds games, that like we know what we're getting by the time it arrives? Is that decreasing the value of games? Topics like that. He left GameSpot a while ago and went on to do something I think is even more valuable. He makes this YouTube channel called No Clip, which are like very professionally shot and edited interviews with game developers and covering game stories.
I've heard of it.
It's been running for 2 years now. They're excellent videos. They're very long form, just scrolling through. Sometimes they're broken into multiple parts, but they will go for an hour or longer. They're excellent. He's covered games from Rocket League and Doom to The Witcher 3, Final Fantasy XIV, Horizon Zero Dawn. More contemporarily, they're doing a video series on Hades, the Supergiant game, and they're actually in the developer studio, like covering it as it is being developed, because it's in like an early access state right now. So they're gonna like get actual footage from kind of spreading the curtain behind the consumer and how games are actually made, which is an awesome initiative I really appreciate. So they've got a wide range of topics.
What was his name again?
Danny O'Dwyer.
He sounds like a good pick.
I am a big fan.
How old is he?
I'm bad at guessing ages. He's got some gray hair, but I would put him at like late 30s to 40.
Okay, because that would definitely affect whether or not he'd want to come on our podcast. Just a couple of kids doing this thing.
Oh no, this is a pie in the sky bet. I don't think we can get it.
Because Brian David Gilbert is like 26. He's like our age, so I feel like that's more realistic.
I'm shooting for the stars with my pick.
It's a good pick nonetheless.
Thanks.
Whose question was this?
This was Nathan's question.
Oh, yeah, because he friggin' grand slammed this episode.
Right. He's making our content for us at this point.
Yo, you know the streamer Greek God X? He's on Twitch.
I do not actually.
Oh, okay. This is mind-blowing. You're a pretty hardworking guy. Imagine somebody leeching onto the popularity of another streamer called Soda Poppin'. He would do his game things while Greek God X would just hover in the chat, spam certain emotes, and just sort of be like an attention seeker to a certain extent, to the point where Soda Poppin' would acknowledge him in-game. What Greek God would do is like go to the same place as Soda on the map and play into certain bits, and Greek sort of started generating a following, and then he leached onto another popular streamer called Tyler One. He's the like muscular guy that streams and would do things like, hey, if I can beat you in this game, you got to make me a mod, which means to be like a moderator in the chat to grant certain powers. And Greek God became a mod for Tyler and has since surpassed or risen to the popularity of these streamers that he's leached onto, and partly because he's just a funny entertainer, but he has totally adopted this. He called himself Leech Level 4 at one point, where he can sustain a living just by leeching onto other people. And he made the joke of when he reaches Leech Level 5, other people are going to be making content for him and he doesn't got to do anything. So hopefully, we can just coast on Nathan's questions for months.
That was quite the deep cut you just pulled from that.
You should check him. Like, Greek God X is his title. I think part of his popularity is just the astonishment of how he sort of like Kim Kardashian his way to tens of thousands of viewers on the regular just from interacting with famous people, or like, Paris Hilton, those kind of types.
This has been quite the podcast episode.
Yo, we're hitting like 90 minutes, like you said.
My recording is sitting at 1 hour and 54 minutes.
Yeah, but I'm going to cut out all of our...
Oh, got it.
...ums and ahs and all of your racial slurs, so...
Thank you. Yeah, that's critical.
You're welcome.
That'll wrap it for episode 7 of Mobius Tubes.
Thank you for listening, listener. Please give us some feedback. Look forward to the song that's going to debut next episode, a la Paco. And
also, listeners, if you've been enjoying the work we've been doing, I hear that Leaving reviews on podcast distribution services is very helpful for the sorting algorithm. So if you've enjoyed your time with us, if you could leave us a review, we'd appreciate it a great deal.
Chris spends a lot of time making sure that the feeds get uploaded. So, that'd be a good way to thank him. Are we on Spotify now?
We are not at this moment, but
we could be.
We could be at any time we wish. They're practically begging to have us back.
Okay. Yeah, please leave us a review. Thanks for listening. Take it away, Chris.
Goodbye.